when you've got that good perennial base, you can ride the ups and downs of dry times and that sort of thing. We're here in Shannon's paddock on Belmont Station, which is about 30 kilometres northwest of Broken Hill. And Shannon's paddock is the paddock that's going to directly benefit from being spelled and getting relief using the old man saltbush plantation we've done in the corner of the paddock. The idea of spelling Shannon's paddock is when our perennials, like the saltbush you see going pretty well here, is at a critical stage in its life cycle. If it's starting to seed and things are dry and the sheep are getting into it, then we can give the paddock a rest by putting them in the saltbush plantation, and it means that the large area of Shannon's paddock gets relief. The idea of spelling Shannon's paddock is to keep the perennials in Shannon's paddock going strong. Things like the mitchell grass you see here, and never fail grass and spear grass, as well as, you know, in the lower spots, windmill grass and love grass and that sort of thing. They're the backbone of your grazing. If you don't have the perennials, as you can see here, you know, we haven't had sort of substantial rain for germination for probably about 6 months, but we've still got a very healthy pasture because it's predominantly made up of perennial grasses and perennial bush, cotton bush, and the larger shrubs like acacia and that sort of thing. We've had, you know, good rains through all 4 seasons, summer, winter, autumn and spring, and so we've got you know, a good mix of wild flowers, wild statice and wild hops and plants like that come up. You can see a lot of leftover seed. Everything that's grown is sort of life cycled and dropped its seed. Here's a big heap of remnant spinach. Here's a big heap of button grass that's dropped its seed. So you've got the 2 ends there. You've got a summer and a winter feed. They've all gone through their life cycle, and despite us not having a lot of rain the last 6 months, things are still in pretty good condition. There's a lot of dry feed there, and you don't need much rain to keep things kicking along fairly healthy. We've got good root structure and good seed base here to kick on for the next few years. Annuals are a great food source while they're there, but if you deplete your perennial stock down, when you get to a time like this where we've had, you know, the odd small little rain but nothing substantial to grow, to germinate anything, you're left with nothing. So perennials are that backbone that stop you falling into a self-made drought. Without the perennials, you're living on the edge because you're just waiting for the next dry time. Whereas if you've got a good body of bush like saltbush and other perennial grasses, you only need, you know, 30-40 points of rain to green things up, keep things kicking along, and you've got a good food source that can keep you going through just that dry time. We generally work on 40% ground cover, so when things start, you know, getting thin and we think we're probably down to about 40% cover, it's time to move the stock off and leave something there, some root structure, because being such open country, you can't take everything. You know, once you take everything, then you start an avalanche of wind sweeping and you get a rain and seedlings come up and get sandblasted and that sort of thing. So you've got to leave that structure of 40% there so that if you get a rain, you've got some perennial plants and some other plants that can reshoot. And also, you know, if you go for a long period without any rain, you have a few dust storms and that sort of thing, you're not getting all your topsoil blown away. If we've already grazed a saltbush and there's a risk of doing damage to the bush or you know, having the bush die from overgrazing or something like that, we then wouldn't use this saltbush. We would have to look at adjusting or utilising another paddock or selling stock or reducing numbers or something like that. So this Shannon's paddock, it's been destocked since about August 2009, so a bit over 2 years. It's had no stock in it until last month. You know, it's going to be right for a fair while, but we're closely monitoring the bladder saltbush in that paddock because it took a fair knock in 2002, and we're trying to regenerate it so we've got a good body, a good backbone of bladder, like perennial saltbush out in Shannon's paddock. When you've got that good perennial base, you can ride the ups and downs of dry times and that sort of thing. Full-blown drought, that's another matter, but dry times is something that with good management you can see yourself through.